The Lord also said to Moses and Aaron, I am giving the land of Canaan to your people. Your people will enter that land. At that time, I might cause mildew to grow in someone's house. The person who owns that house must come and tell the priest, I see something like mildew in my house. Then the priest must order the people to take everything out of the house before he goes in to look at the mildew. Then the priest will not have to say everything in the house is unclean. After the people have taken everything out of the house, the priest will go in to look at the house. He will look at the mildew. If the mildew on the walls of the house has holes that are a green or red color, and if the mildew goes into the wall's surface, he must go out of the house and lock the house for 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest must come back and check the house. If the mildew has spread on the walls of the house, then he must order the people to tear out the stones with the mildew on them and throw them away. They must put these stones at a special unclean place outside the city. Then the priest must have the entire house scraped inside. The people must throw away the plaster that was scraped off the walls. They must put that plaster at a special unclean place outside the city. Then new stones must be put in the walls, and the walls must be covered with new plaster. Maybe someone took away the old stones and plaster and put in new stones and plaster. And maybe mildew again appears in that house. Then the priest must come in and check the house. If the infection has spread in the house, it is a disease that spreads quickly to other places. So the house is unclean. The house must be torn down. All the stones, plaster, and pieces of wood must be taken to the special unclean place outside the city. Anyone who goes in that house will be unclean until evening. Anyone who eats in that house or lies down in there must wash their clothes. After new stones and plaster are put in the house, the priest must check the house. If the mildew has not spread through the house, the priest will announce that the house is clean, because the mildew is gone. Then, to make the house clean, the priest must take 2 birds, a piece of cedar wood, a piece of red cloth, and a hyssop plant. He will kill 1 bird in a clay bowl over running water. Then he will take the cedar wood, the hyssop, the piece of red cloth, and the living bird, and dip them in the blood of the bird that was killed over running water. Then he will sprinkle that blood on the house 7 times. In this way he will use these things to make the house clean. He will go to an open field outside the city and let the living bird go free. In this way the priest will make the house pure. The house will be clean. These are the rules for any infection of leprosy, for mildew on pieces of cloth or in a house. These are the rules for swelling, rashes, or bright spots on the skin. These rules teach when something is clean and when something is unclean. These are the rules about these kinds of diseases. The Lord also said to Moses and Aaron, Say to the Israelites, whoever has a genital discharge is unclean. The person is unclean whether the discharge continues to flow or whether it stops. If a man with a discharge lies on a bed, that bed becomes unclean. Everything he sits on will become unclean. If you touch that bed, you must wash your clothes and bathe in water. You will become unclean until evening. If you sit on anything that he sat on, you must wash your clothes and bathe in water. You will be unclean until evening. If you touch him, you must wash your clothes and bathe in water. You will be unclean until evening. If he spits on you, you must wash your clothes and bathe in water. You will be unclean until evening. If that man sits on a saddle, it will become unclean. If you touch or carry anything that was under him, you will be unclean until evening. If he touches you, you must wash your clothes and bathe in water. You will be unclean until evening. If a man with a discharge touches a clay bowl, that bowl must be broken. If he touches a wooden bowl, that bowl must be washed in water. When it comes time for a man with a discharge to be made clean, he must wait 7 days. Then he must wash his clothes and bathe his body in running water. Then he will become clean. On the 8th day, he must take for himself 2 doves or 2 young pigeons and come before the Lord at the entrance of the meeting tent. He will give the 2 birds to the priest. The priest will offer the birds, one for a sin offering and the other for a burnt offering. In this way, the priest will make that man pure before the Lord. If a man has a flow of semen, he must bathe his whole body in water. He will be unclean until evening. If the semen is on any clothing or leather, that clothing or leather must be washed with water. It will be unclean until evening. If a woman has sexual relations with a man, and he has a flow of semen, both the man and woman must bathe in water. They will be unclean until evening. If a woman has a discharge from her monthly time of bleeding, she will be unclean for 7 days. Anyone who touches her will be unclean until evening. Everything she lies on during her monthly time of bleeding will be unclean, and everything she sits on during that time will be unclean. Whoever touches her bed must wash their clothes and bathe in water. They will be unclean until evening. Whoever touches anything she has sat on must wash their clothes and bathe in water. They will be unclean until evening. It doesn't matter if they touch the woman's bed or if they touch something she sat on. They will be unclean until evening. If a man has sexual relations with a woman during her monthly time of bleeding, he will be unclean for 7 days. Every bed he lies on will be unclean. If a woman has a discharge of blood for many days, not during her time of monthly bleeding, or if she has a discharge after that time, she will be unclean, just as during the time of her monthly bleeding. She will be unclean for as long as she has a discharge. Any bed she lies on during the time of her discharge will be like her bed during the time of her monthly bleeding. Everything she sits on will be unclean, just as it is during the time she is unclean from her monthly bleeding. Whoever touches these things will be unclean until evening. They must wash their own clothes and bathe in water. After the woman's discharge stops, she must wait 7 days. After that, she will be clean. Then on the 8th day, she must bring 2 doves or 2 young pigeons to the priest at the entrance of the meeting tent. Then the priest must offer 1 bird for a sin offering and the other bird for a burnt offering. In this way, the priest will make her pure before the Lord. So you must warn the Israelites about being unclean. If you don't warn the people, they might make my holy tent unclean, and then they would have to die. These are the rules for anyone with a discharge from the body. These rules are for men who become unclean from a flow of semen. And these rules are for women who become unclean from their monthly time of bleeding. And these are the rules for anyone who becomes unclean by sleeping with another person who is unclean. 2 of Aaron's sons died while offering incense to the Lord. After that time, the Lord spoke to Moses. The Lord said, "Talk to your brother Aaron. Tell him that he cannot go behind the curtain into the most holy place anytime he wants to. The mercy cover is in that room behind the curtain on top of the holy box, and I appear in a cloud over that mercy cover. If Aaron goes into that room, he will die. Before Aaron enters the most holy place, he will offer a bull for a sin offering and a ram for a burnt offering. Aaron will wash his whole body with water and put on the special clothes. He will put on the linen underwear next to his body, the linen robe, the linen belt, and then he will put the linen turban on his head. From the whole community of Israel, Aaron will accept 2 male goats for a sin offering and 1 ram for a burnt offering. Then he will offer the bull for the sin offering. This sin offering is for himself. He will do this to purify himself and his family. Then Aaron will take the 2 goats and bring them before the Lord at the doorway of the meeting tent. Aaron will throw lots for the 2 goats. 1 lot will be for the Lord, the other lot will be for Azazel. Then Aaron will offer the goat chosen by the lot for the Lord. Aaron will make this goat a sin offering, but the goat chosen by the lot for Azazel will be brought alive before the Lord. Then this goat will be sent out to Azazel in the desert. This is to make the people pure. Then Aaron will offer the bull as a sin offering for himself. He will purify himself and his family. He will kill the bull for the sin offering for himself. Then he will take a fire pan full of coals of fire from the altar before the Lord. Aaron will take 2 handfuls of sweet incense that has been ground into powder and take it into the room behind the curtain. He will put the incense on the fire before the Lord. Then the cloud of incense will hide the mercy cover that is over the box that holds the agreement. This way, Aaron will not die. Aaron will dip his finger into the bull's blood and sprinkle it on the front of the holy box. Then he will sprinkle the blood 7 times onto the front of the mercy cover. Then Aaron will kill the goat of the sin offering for the people. He will bring this goat's blood into the room behind the curtain. He will do with the goat's blood as he did with the bull's blood. He will sprinkle the goat's blood on the mercy cover and in front of it. In this way, Aaron will purify the most holy place from all the uncleanness and sins of the Israelites. He will also purify the meeting tent, because it stands in the middle of the people whose sins have made them unclean. No one must be in the meeting tent when Aaron goes in to purify the most holy place. No one is to go in there until Aaron comes out after purifying himself, his family, and all the Israelites. Then Aaron will go out to the altar that is before the Lord. Aaron will make the altar pure. He will take some of the blood from the bull and from the goat and put it on the corners of the altar on all 4 sides. Then he will dip his finger in the blood and sprinkle it on the altar 7 times. In this way, Aaron will make the altar holy and clean from all the sins of the Israelites. So Aaron will make the most holy place, the meeting tent, and the altar pure. Then he will bring the living goat to the front of the tent. He will put both his hands on the head of the living goat. Then he will confess the sins and crimes of the Israelites over the goat. In this way, Aaron will lay the people's sins on the goat's head. Then he will send the goat away into the desert. A man will be standing by, ready to lead this goat away. So the goat will carry all the people's sins on itself into the empty desert. The man who leads the goat will let it loose in the desert. Then Aaron will enter the meeting tent. He will take off the linen clothes that he put on when he went into the holy place. He will leave these clothes there. He will wash his whole body with water in a holy place. Then he will put on his clothes. He will come out and offer his burnt offering and the people's burnt offering. He will make himself and the people pure. Then he will burn the fat of the sin offering on the altar. The man who led the goat to Azazel must wash his clothes and his whole body with water. After that he may come into the camp. The bull and the goat for the sin offerings will be taken outside the camp. The blood from these animals was brought into the holy place to make the holy things pure. The skins, bodies, and body waste of those animals will be burned in the fire. Then the man who burns them must wash his clothes and bathe his whole body with water. After that, he may come into the camp. This law will always continue for you. On the 10th day of the 7th month, you must not eat food. You must not do any work. None of the travelers or foreigners living in your land can do any work either. Because on this day, the priest will do this to make you pure and wash away your sins. Then you will be clean to the Lord. You must humble yourselves because this day is a very important day of rest for you. This law will continue forever. In the future, this ceremony will be done by the priest who will be anointed and appointed to serve after his father. That priest will put on the holy linen clothes and make the most holy place, the meeting tent, and the altar pure. He will also make the priest and all the people pure. That law will continue forever. Once every year you will purify the Israelites from all their sins. So they did everything that the Lord had commanded Moses.